this meeting to order, the MVE meeting. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Should we do roll call? Krista, so who's here? Krista, I can't hear you if you're.
Yes, I was muted. I had a lot of background noise there for a moment.
Okay.
One moment, let me see if I can find the list. I apologize.
No worries. You're in 3 meetings in 3 days.
And she was working at 10 o'clock last night, so be patient.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Jill Anderson,
Present.
Caroline Traub,
Here.
Andrew Klein,
I'm here.
Jay Arnold,
He is traveling and he may be late.
Todd Bayreuther,
Here.
Phil Lemley, Anthony Mashmet,
By my count, that is a quorum, just barely.
Just barely.
Okay, well, that means we can take action on things, which is what we're here to do. So review and approve agenda. The agenda is quite short. You see it on your screen. Anybody want to make a motion or have any suggestions?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 I guess I was probably remiss in not asking any members of the public that wanted to introduce themselves to do so. Are there any members of the public that want to be recognized?
This is Mike Lubliner with Washington State University Energy Code Program.
Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Larry Andrews with Andrews Mechanical Incorporated.
Welcome, Larry.
Luke Howard, Department of Commerce.
Hi, Luke.
Andrea Smith, Building Industry Association of Washington.
Hi, Andrea.
Andy Burnham, Rushing.
Andy.
Kevin Noel with Northwest Natural.
Hey, Kevin.
Ian
All right,
JC,
happy-
Northwest Natural.
Hey, Ian. And a happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.
And joining late, I'm Jay Arnold, Kirkland Deputy Mayor and SBCC member.
All right, thanks, Jay. Are you in an airport, Jay?
I am just in time.
All right, thanks for making this a priority. That's great. Okay, so before we get, why don't we do the meeting minutes? We want to look at the meeting minutes earlier this year. Any comments on this or motions?
I'll move to approve. This is Todd.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second, further discussion. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. So we have an agenda now. We have gone through our meeting minutes. I'm going to give a bit of an introduction before we move on. We're on item 4. We received thousands of comments, letters from lots of people. We have hundreds of comments of a technical nature. We have thousands of comments that oppose or support mostly 3 specific code proposals. So I'm going to suggest that we don't preempt the council's decisions on any of the highly controversial ones, and instead focus on the comments that we can suggest a technical resolution for. And I'm going to suggest that today our goal should be to give a package to the council so they can concentrate on the big issues that attracted the thousands of comments, and then pass what we sent in because we have kind of vetted all the other stuff. Are there any kind of comments on that approach? Okay. To that end, Caroline and I strategized on 5 buckets to put these things into today. The first would be editorial or clerical suggestions that staff could take care of and integrate into the code that goes to the council. The second would be ones where we can address today at the MVE. They're not too technical, and we have the expertise in the room to make informed decisions on, and they're not vastly substantial issues like the ones that attracted thousands of comments. The third bucket would be too technical for the group assembled here today, where we can send those to the tag and possibly convene the tag to take care of those issues, so we don't have to hammer out highly detailed technical things today where we might not have the expertise in the room. The fourth bucket would be those highly controversial ones where we're not going to try and preempt the council's decisions by making decisions on those today. We would essentially just let the 3 major proposals that attracted a lot of attention go to the council as is, unless there's a small technical modification that was in a proposal. And then the 5th bucket would be proposals for which it's too late. They're actually code proposals and not new code proposals, and not modifications of existing, or where they're not relevant, or there's not enough detail, or we really can't deal with them at this point in the code process. So those 5 buckets are the ones that we're thinking would be good to place all of the comments in. And we did receive hundreds of them that we want to go through today. And hopefully some of the people that made those comments are in the room so that we can, they can help walk us through those. Does that sound like a good approach? Are there any comments on that approach? Okay, well, without further ado, let's get into and I hope everybody was able to find the documents. There was several documents in there, and Krista did an amazing job of sorting them. And I think the one that she has open right now, proposal mods to 2021 Washington State Energy Code Commercial, is probably the most relevant for our discussion today. So I think we'll spend our time on that one. In that, Krista summarized the main code proposal changes that have strikeouts in new language so that they're easier to look at. And then there's links where people have provided a great number of substantial comments, like Eric Vandermeer or Mike Kennedy. So I guess let's start on this one. And I think if we think it's going to take more than a couple of minutes, well, I guess how we bucket these things. If anyone immediately sees that this needs to go to the tag or is purely clerical, let's just suggest that right away. If we think we can handle it today, let's suggest that right away as well, so that we can kind of bucket these. So Krista, are you going to be able to kind of figure out, I guess you can watch the recording, but are we going to be able to note which, okay, in the recommendation column, we can put whether it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 or whatever. Okay, so first code proposal. Changing a definition of DOAS.
Yeah, I guess to jump in on this one, Shell, I think this is one that could have differing opinions and might benefit from a more robust discussion. I think this was Lisa's added definition, and I could see some folks potentially disagreeing with this change.
So ideally it would go to the tag is what you're suggesting.
Yes.
All right.
Joe, this is Mike Lubliner.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I know that one of the things we were talking about in the mechanical tag was the portable classrooms, which are commercial coach, which L&I is authority for, and they typically use a unit that integrates both the HVAC and the ventilation. And this definition might help clarify some of the questions that have come up with those outside units that hang off the side of the building that are, so that if they had a heat recovery system in them, they would be used without having redundant distribution systems. So just an FYI, but I agree with Alan. I think it's good to move that one to the tab. Thanks.
All right. Okay. We'll move on to the next one. Another definition.
So yeah, this one, I think this one makes sense. One potential tweak might be to change where provided to where required. But I think it's a good point that there are other types of sensors that can accommodate this. That said, this is an example of one. I think Nick O'Neill proposed this one. So I guess it's kind of a question, Chell, of do we want to give the proponent an opportunity to agree or disagree with the public comment that has been made as part of this process?
Is Mike in here? Oh, or you mean the proponent of the original definition?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I guess there is a subtle difference between provided and required. Oh, we should change hoot to hood as well. I mean, I think we have the purview to change a word like that and send that to the council. I think we can make this without consulting the proponent of the original code. Is that correct, Carissa?
Well, we can make a recommendation to the council that it be changed, yeah.
Yep, I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah, and I guess just to be totally clear, none of this today, we're not voting this into code. We're voting this to go forward. If we vote on something, we're voting it to go to the council to then be approved into the CR 103 official rules. Okay, any other comments on this definition? Okay. And this is I'm assuming that the only change is the exception in here.
Yeah, I think I looked at this one. I think the only question is whether that is a necessary exception. I think that table might be more stringent. So the exception would just be, hey, if you want, you can comply with this more stringent option. That was my initial read at it. So maybe the TAC should take a closer look at this one as well.
That sounds good. Next one is demand responsive controls. Caroline, do you have any thoughts on this? It seems fairly common sense to me.
Yeah, I thought this one seemed to make sense.
Okay. The next one is the Hospital Association suggests adding an exception for critical facilities. And this is when we heard testimony both in, I think, December, as well as this written comment.
And on this one, the Hospital Association and Johnny Kocher both have different language for this exception.
Okay. Should we review those side by side?
Let me pull up Johnny's.
Okay, so what we're looking at specifically is first the exception 18, and the Hospital Association has I2 occupancies and related medical facilities that are required to have redundant emergency backup systems. And Johnny's proposal is just group I2 occupancy buildings or areas of buildings.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Hospital Association proposals may be a bit broader, just the including but not limited to. And then also kind of adding on the related medical facilities. So I think some mashup of the two could make sense, but I think at a high level, that's kind of the difference. I think the Johnny's is just limiting it strictly to I2 occupancies, whereas the Hospital Association might allow for inclusion of non-I2 occupancies that meet that other criteria, and whether or not we think that other criteria is, I guess, concise enough or enforceable enough.
Well, there is a definition of essential facilities, I think, in the IBC. Is that correct, Stoyan?
Yes. But I don't have it open.
Well, so essential facilities is not, if it's a title, it's not code language. And I don't know whether it's kind of a title here. But it really seems like they hinge on redundant emergency backup systems. So some entity somewhere defines which medical facilities have or required to have redundant emergency backup systems. And that seems to be the key phrase here. And that's what the hospital association was most concerned about, in that if they have, or they're required to have redundant emergency backup systems, then they would have to have large battery arrays in order to meet the backup requirements from a redundancy perspective. And so that seems to directly address their concern, but whether it's too broad or not, I can't say. So this could perhaps go to the tag. Is that, what do you
I
think?
think that would make sense. Yeah, to maybe think about some unintended consequences or just wordsmith it a little bit more, but I think generally it's on track.
Okay, so we'll send this and Johnny's to the tag for comparison and review. Okay, and Andy is next, and I know Andy's in the room. Virtual room. You want to briefly talk about this, Andy?
Yes. Sorry, I had stepped away from my computer for a moment. Yeah, so this one was the section C403.14 mandatory heat pump provisions for space heating was not listed in the mandatory requirements for C407 energy modeling. Section C404 is, so if option 2 moves forward with the heat pumps, we basically would have mandatory domestic water heat pumps, but not space heating. And this was included as mandatory for the 2018 SEC. So my understanding is this was intended to be included as mandatory even for energy modeling, but I'm not sure. I thought this might be editorial, but it is obviously a big impact of requiring heat pumps for an energy modeling pathway, but it's in line with the 2018 SEC language.
Yeah, Andy, I totally agree. I think that was the intent, that requirement would apply to the total building performance path as well.
I guess it seems like it would be a change unless it was part of either the original proposal of the tag deliberations or the CR 102. Eric.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very significant change. Was this intentional in the proposal not to include it, or was it not? It's an oversight in the proposal and in the tags review. So yeah, it's very substantive change to the natural gas industry if they're counting on the fact that the C407 energy modeling buildings don't have to comply with that code section and with folks that want to use electric resistance heat. So yeah, I think it's something the council's going to have to weigh in on, and yeah, there probably needs a recommendation from the committee on what was the intent. So
Yeah, and I guess, thanks, Eric, that's great. I think if Krista, you could go through and see if it was either in the original proposal or in the CR 102 or in the final package. I guess I'm wondering, was it omitted accidentally at some stage of the process, or was it omitted at the beginning of the process, in which case it was not actually part of the code proposal? I think that's really relevant, because if it wasn't part of the code proposal and it was not proposed by the tag, then I don't see how we could consider it an editorial change at this level. It would be a noticeable change in the code.
My thought is it was probably a staff oversight, because I took most of the sections that were intended to be mandatory and added them to the table rather than having those proposals noting that they should be part of table C407, but I would have to go back and double check and make sure. It probably, no, I can't even say that. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
think
I'm
this-
I'm going and back checking the original proposal, and I'll post in the chat when I get that pulled up.
Okay, so we'll delay which bucket we put this into until some research is done. Okay.
And then there was a second modification to this table suggested by Andy.
Oh yeah, so this one was C403.8 is the fan power allowances, the fan power budgets. And I was proposing that it for C407 energy modeling, it just applies to the whole fan power and fan controls section. But it seems like the fan power budget is something that should be allowable as traded within an energy model study. So I was proposing excluding the fan power budget tables for larger fans, and then the small under 1/12, basically the ERV fan power budget table. So allow the fan power watts per square foot, watts per CFM limits to be traded within the energy model.
Yeah, I guess this one seems a little bit similar to the last comment, just that if it wasn't previously part of the proposal, it seems like fan power calcs have been mandatory thus far, and that might be more of a change.
I think it's a change we could accept or not accept. Eric.
So yeah, I guess the thought on this one would be that since the newfound power is much more restrictive and, you know, applicable to smaller systems, and is not in alignment with, you know, 90.1 methodology moving over to a Title 24 methodology, that this may be a good way to allow a little bit more flexibility in the code. So that I guess that's my thoughts on that. And it looks like for the last one, the original proposal at least did have that as a mandatory provision in the table in the original code proposal. So the space heating heat pump provision. So so maybe it can be considered editorial.
Oh, so Eric, you're saying there were exceptions?
There was an exception that the original proposal from Johnny had in it. So there was a modification to table C407.2 as part of that proposal.
Sorry, that's
I'm sorry to clarify. Are you saying for the previous item?
Yeah, for the previous item, correct, for that one. For the heat pump item, space heat pump. Yeah, that language above there was part of the original proposal.
And then I guess it's staff should determine if it was if the tag decided to remove it, or if it was removed.
That would still have to be
Unintentionally by staff.
determined, yes.
Yep. So this fan and fan controls one, I think it's fine at this point to carve out exceptions as long as we don't think they meaningfully, well, I think we can carve out exceptions if we think they're to the benefit of the code.
I mean, this would potentially reduce the stringency of the code, but also reduces a bunch of calculations that folks have to do and a bunch of plan review that folks have to do for all fan systems that are now, larger than 1 kW, which is a fairly small threshold. So there, this is adding a lot of, work to a C407 compliance path. So.
Yeah. I think this one could benefit from tag consideration.
Yep.
Because I think it is a good point that the fan section did change quite a bit. But perhaps there's been reasons in the past why that has been a mandatory section.
I think tag review for that one is good. Is that the end of Andy's?
Yep,
Andy's
I think that
comments?
makes sense.
So that means Eric, you were busy.
Well, I don't know if all these are mine that we came up with, but I think, yeah, I did submit this. This is Rushing's review of the code for editorial corrections. So we can go through them one by one if we want to.
So Krista starred asterisked several that she suggested or not simply
Okay.
editorial. And I guess I'll suggest maybe we just go through those. Does that make sense, Krista?
Sure.
So, and I have it up on my screen, so I can read them off to you if you want. The first one was C4 3.3.2.15. First one that you marked with an asterisk was table C403.3.2 15. I think it was this one.
Yeah, so these are basically editorial comments that aren't part of 90.1 that are part of the Seattle code to clarify how this new table is intended to be used. So yeah, this is definitely, I guess, new code language, but would help with the enforcement of this table. So I guess it's an oversight that these didn't get submitted with the code. So they have to do with clarification that if you have larger equipment in the table for air to water heat pumps or heat recovery chillers, that they're not covered under this test standard, that you don't have to meet the HRI rating. There's also equipment on the market, air to water heat pumps that are configured only for heating and aren't going to be used for cooling, only need to provide the heating efficiencies, and that's not clear in the code right now. There is what's the third one? Units that are both an air to water heat pump and a heat recovery chiller. So there are units on the market that turn off the condenser fans and operate as a heat recovery chiller when they're exchanging energy. So those, here we're saying that you can apply either as an air source, a piece of equipment, or a heat recovery chiller piece, but you don't have flexibility or clarifying how those advanced pieces of equipment would comply. And then that you only have to comply with one of these conditions for the, because there's 4 different leaving water temperatures. So a lot of equipment is not designed to hit all those different leaving water temperatures. So you select the one that's closest. So again, this is a brand new ASHRAE table. These were Seattle clarifications that we unfortunately didn't get into the code, but do clarify, how this table would be used. So this could be done through an interpretation, or it could be added to the code.
Yeah, it seems reasonable to me to be able to include it in the code as a modification based on the CR 102. I don't know, Krista, is this seem reasonable to you from just from a process perspective?
Makes me a little twitchy.
Yeah.
But if the council determines that it's not substantive,
Yeah, it's really providing flexibility and clarity. So it's not increasing the stringency of the code.
I think it seems reasonable, and if it's been vetted by the Seattle process, then it's probably at least technically pretty solid. Does anybody have other thoughts on this?
I don't disagree. I think they're good clarifications that help people interpret and apply the tables. I think it does raise the discussion, Chill, about a editorial change versus a not substantial change versus a substantial change. And it seems like there's some items that would be substantial changes, and then there's editorial ones, and then there's kind of a gray area in there. And this might be one of those ones that is not fundamentally changing to any massive degree the intent or the content. It's providing additional clarity and a minor amount of flexibility. So
yeah, that sounds good. Okay, well, I guess my thought is this could go into the bucket where we address today, and we suggest that it goes forward to the council for their approval. Does that seem reasonable? That is the second bucket. Okay, I hear lots of silence, and silence to me tells me we don't have disagreements. So, okay, so we're gonna send that to the council, put it in the second bucket, and say that it seems reasonable. Okay, next one, Eric.
yeah, I had a minor comment. I don't know if this next one was one of the starred ones or not, but
Oh. Go ahead, Carolyn.
yeah, on that same page. Let's see.
okay, I had it there.
Yeah, so I think that, sorry, the comment 8 seems great. Comment 9, I think just reading this section, and Eric, it wasn't part of your comment, but that the underlined sentence, the airflow rate thresholds in section C40376 that define when the energy recovery requirements in that section do not apply, comma, are not applicable to this section. Just kind of a little typo there. I think if we just crossed out are not applicable, that might fix that particular sentence.
Let me find the actual editable one. Hang on.
Okay, maybe we can just have Krista look at this out of this meeting and clean up the language.
Sure.
Is that appropriate?
Yeah, and then I think the one below that, I think Eric, you just had a comment about exception 3, but I think maybe your edit got cut off or exception 3 wasn't in there. So anyway, just a comment, but okay. In the
Did it get cut off? Yeah, you're right. We had something that when we were editing this, we must have erased our editorial comment in exception 3. So
I don't know if that was important, if you wanted to resubmit it or state it.
yeah, hold on, let me look at what that was regard to. Yeah, I could re-provide that language.
Cool.
What's on the page right now? I think if you cross out "are not applicable," it changes the meaning. And I don't understand the technical meaning of this, but if you have airflow rate thresholds that define when something doesn't apply, then you're saying that's not applicable to the section, meaning those exceptions don't apply to this section. It seems like it changes the meaning to strike out those 3 words. I don't know. I don't understand the technical requirements of this section, but I do understand that we've changed the meaning of the section and maybe it needs to be changed.
Yeah, so yeah, my intent was not to change that part, but to add the following words in exception 3, which is in accordance with section C 403.76. So there's a clear pointer in exception 3, which is for the group R occupancies to the section C 403.7.6. So we're consistent with the paragraph above in C 403.3.5.1. So unfortunately, yes, when we edited this document and sent it out, we lost those a couple words that I recommended adding. So I can provide an email with that so we have it.
Now, did you want to go back to reviewing these one by one, or do you want to do the star ones?
Let's do the starred
Skipped
one.
over a bunch of them first, so.
Yeah. So the next starred one is C 406.2.15. C 406.2.15.
Oh, 6, sorry.
It's 2.15.
Okay, once again. C462.2.15.
I mean, that's what it says in this document is just
Oh,
2.15, but it,
215.
yeah, yep.
Sorry.
So the one we're looking at is the exception kitchen appliances is designated ADA dwelling units. Is that what we're,
Yes.
I'm assuming that the adding the word star, we're supposed to say Energy Stars.
Yeah.
Editorial.
That's
So yeah,
editorial.
this was a recommended exception to be added, as we commonly find that some ADA dwelling units, we can't get Energy Star appliances, so that this would be reducing the stringent of the code and allowing more flexibility for the designated ADA units. And that might need some wordsmithing on the best code term to use there, but
This is Mike Lubliner. I had a clarifying question on this in terms of the intent when it references R2 occupancies. So this is a commercial provision, does this include low-rise R2 multifamily? This has been a problematic issue with multiple references in the code that we're trying to address in other areas.
Mike, are you referring to the fact that this is the commercial energy code and so it doesn't cover?
Yeah, we have requirements for Energy Star appliances in energy credits specific for low-rise multifamily as part of the residential code.
Yep.
This, I would think, is really limited, should be limited, in my opinion, to the 4-story or higher, since the residential is 3-story or lower.
And I think it inherently only applies to buildings permitted under the commercial energy code.
Very good. I wanted to clarify that because that could come up in some other proposals, as it makes the same wide brush discussion with the requirement for heat recovery, balanced ventilation. Thank you.
Well, I guess my understanding is this code only applies, you only apply the commercial code to, residential 3 stories or over, or I guess the applicant could choose to apply the commercial energy code if they so desired. Is that not the case? Could this somehow inadvertently apply to things otherwise under the residential energy code? Because I'm trying to understand where you're coming from on this.
This has been, yeah, I don't mean to sidetrack us. This has been a gray area that we get calls from code officials and others on, and not necessarily in this specific area, but in general, when something's referenced in the commercial code and it says R2, does it include R2 low rise? I'll take this offline. I think I'm hearing what you said was that it shouldn't, but I don't want to sort, you've got a big agenda today, but here's an example of how that would be another ambiguity for us to deal with if it wasn't defined as strictly to limit it to 4-story or greater R2. Thank you.
Okay. So is this one we send to the tag because it probably needs to be wordsmithed a bit?
I'm not sure I would let the energy code tag wordsmith an exception for accessibility.
It's true.
The exception, this is Stan, sorry. I was trying to understand the issue. It took me a while, but it needs some rewording, because ADA dwelling units is not appropriate term. It's a very common term used in real life, but the code uses different terms. We have type A buildings units, we have type B, we have accessible units, adaptable, those kind of things. So that will need some rewording. I don't know what is the appropriate entity that will do that. Do we need to go back to tag? Staff will do it. I don't know. I will leave it to the committee members.
Okay. I would love to assign this as a piece of homework for someone in the next half hour or hour to reword this such that it meets the code. Does anyone want to take on that?
It's not for half hour. It needs a little research. We need to figure out. So again, in chapter 11 and in the ANSI 117.1, the technical provisions for accessibility, there are different terms. Also, public housing. So ADA is under Americans with Disabilities Act, but the technical provisions are different. So it needs a little research to figure out which type of building requires accessible appliances. For example, type B buildings, they don't address appliances. So they're kind of accessible / adaptable, but they don't require accessible appliances. So it's not for 10 minutes. It will need a little bit more for research.
Right, and if you have an elevator, every unit in a building would be considered a type B unit.
Is this something staff could handle, or is this something that really needs to go to a tech?
I think we just might want to recommend just getting rid of this and just not adding an exception at this point. So
I can research this, but it depends of the time frame. You know, if it's for tomorrow, I don't think I can do that.
I think it'd be for April 15th or April 22nd.
The 22nd. Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay, that'd be great. So a sixth bucket is Stoyan does the work. Okay, thank you. That's great. The next one we had was
Hey.
C406.2.16.
Could we go back one, Chell?
Sure.
Eric has a really good comment on C406.1.1 about the tenant spaces and just kind of, it's related then to another section. C406.1.1.1, but both kind of just speaking to that topic of if you have a core and shell building permitted one code cycle and the first TI doesn't get built out until several cycles later, how does that, which C406 measures does that first TI have to comply with? And maybe presently this is handed kind of at the jurisdiction level, and different jurisdictions have different ideas of this. But I think Eric raises a really good question that I don't know which group is best situated to handle.
yeah, so Shell, as a reminder, and Caroline, for the 2018 code, or excuse me, for the 2015 code, we interpreted that, no, I guess it was the 2018 code, right? For the 2018 code, we interpreted that projects that were permitted under the 2015 code would then utilize the point system for the 2018 code. So that's what the interpretation says. So you're mixing and matching codes based on that interpretation. And then this code now introduces new language further down for that you multiply by the 6 credits in C406.1.1.1 from the 2018 code to the 2021 code, as we changed our point system again, but there is no correction factor from the 2015 code to the 2021 code, for example. So it would be easier long-term to just always track first TIs under the core shell building that it was permitted under. That could be easier language that was figured out. Unfortunately, I don't have that language yet. We would need kind of a directive from the committee, I guess, that's how you want to move forward. And we could work on developing that language for the April meeting. But yeah, we kind of need to decide how we're going to do this long term, because we continue to change the whole point system every code cycle.
So I guess the two options you're suggesting are something like this, where we just multiply the 2018 credits the 2018 credits achieved by 6, so that it translates at least somewhat to the new requirements for the new TI, or that we allow buildings that were originally permitted core and shell under a 2018 code to do TIs under that same, initial TIs under that same energy code.
Well, at least how they track C406 credits. They could have to comply with the new code for the TI, but they would track their C406 credits per that system.
That sounds like a bigger issue than we're going to resolve today.
Yeah, or we could add a multiplication factor for the 2015 code to the 2021 code, I guess is the other option.
Okay, so the language that's highlighted in blue right now, translating from 2018 to 2021 proposed, multiplied by 6 seems reasonable. But you're saying there's nothing from 2015 to 2018. So if somebody built a building permitted under 2015 and builds their first TI, or they build their initial TI under 2021, they would not know how to take credit for 2015 core and shell improvements.
Correct.
Would we just change it to a previous Washington State Energy Code?
Andy,
I think applying the same factor to 2015 and 2018 would be difficult because of the change in the point allocations for between those two code cycles. So just to say, I don't think that's an appropriate solution.
Yeah, Chell, my sense is this is an important topic. Awesome comment, but probably needs a little bit of thought. Can't be solved in the moment. When Chell, were you thinking that the follow-up tag meeting might be, just so folks have a sense of when they would need to develop some tweaks?
with no sense of irony, April 1st, April Fool's Day, we would have the tag get together and try and be as serious as we can about getting through these. I feel like trying to convene the tag that doesn't think it's going to convene 1 week from now would be challenging, but 2 weeks, enough people might be able to attend to make it worthwhile. I think if we delay much longer than that, it's just any decisions we make. We probably have an MVE the following week to finalize all this stuff. And then that would give the council enough time before April 22nd to properly absorb everything. I haven't checked with staff on any of those dates.
I am also a little nervous about making a change to this and then not allowing any public comment on it. To me, it's really pushing a substantive change. I mean, it does help clarify things, but it just makes me nervous. I'll just leave it at that.
Is there, Krista, any guidance on what is a substantial change?
The unofficial guidance is change in regulatory effect. However, I try to coordinate with Dirk and, you know, reading between the lines. It depends. This is why there is no definition. But you know how it's been interpreted in the past. If it changes the regulatory effect, then it's a substantial. Of course, again, it's not an official interpretation. It's something that a common term, a common usage. But I'm not an attorney, so if the council decides that it's not a significant change, then
I guess why would we take public comment if we can't make any changes? I mean, that just seems.
Well, we don't say it's illegal to make changes that have a regulatory effect, but if it's a significant change, then it needs to go back to stage 1 and be posted for a public comment period, and then we need a public hearing, and you know we need to follow the procedure. We need to start the procedure from the beginning.
So, for example, if we exempt hospitals from the fossil fuel and electric resistance proposed section of the code, would that be a substantial change in your?
I would say yes, somebody else will say no. I mean,
Yeah,
it's-
I would say it would be a correlating change to coordinate with the building code requirements. Somebody else would say, yes, this is a substantive change because you're making me do that and not making them do that.
Yeah, so I guess I'm thinking, providing a TI permit applicant some additional guidance on, or providing code officials additional guidance on how to translate between the 2015 code and the 2021 code seems like that's not that substantive compared to many of the other things we're talking about. So I guess this seems fairly minor compared to lots of other things. So
we will have our Assistant Attorney General at the meeting tomorrow. And again, I'm trying to be very careful because it's a legal matter, so I don't want to tell you something that's incorrect. And he'll be there, and so he can explain in legal terms, what this exactly means. I prepared him, and I told him that there may be questions about that.
there will be questions. So I will ask that question tomorrow because it's really germane to what we're trying to do. Okay.
The issue is how we involve the public, so it's not whether or not we can do it.
Yeah.
But, another example is, we have technical advisory group meetings and we had MVE meetings and the council approved something and we put it in the CR 102. So you may have an entity that would say, okay, I attended all these meetings and my proposal went through and now at the last moment, you changed it and I wasn't there because I didn't know this will be changed. So that's something else that we also need to consider. But again, Dirk can provide legally related information tomorrow.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe some of these will are going to be opinions in a year and a half. That the Building Code Council will have to render. Okay, well,
I guess, Jill, on this one, just as an example, is it, it seems like at least a proposal for how to address the comment or additional clarification could be provided, and then a decision could be made whether or not to include it based on whether or not it's substantial. But it seems like we should at least have clarity on if there's a next step or if this is something that cannot be resolved at this time.
Yeah, if there's going to be a translation between the 2015 and 2021 and it's not currently in front of us, and somebody would have to develop it. And so the question is it the tag or is it Eric that's developing that? I don't think the tag wants to develop anything at this point or
Yeah,
so.
to me, the question is, do we want to continue to have these multiplication factors for every code cycle from here through 2030, or, assuming we just don't go to outcome-based codes flat out next code cycle, and so we're going to have these correction factors, or do we just want to establish a precedence for the core shell sets the precedence? That's what we need to make a decision on, and that should come from the MVE committee probably at this point, and not from the tag. So because what we're doing right now with these multiplication factors, it's going to be hard to maintain that for the life of the code. So
yeah, precedent is important. I think also what's in front of us is important because we're dealing with an exact code that we're working on. And if this language is adequate to the 2021 code, then I guess I don't see a big reason to change it. But if we, and I think a code proposal for the 2024 cycle might be the right way to address that, Eric.
Yep, that's fine.
So I guess there's no proposed modifications at this point for this section based on public comment.
Correct, yes.
So that means we can move on to C406.2.16. Okay, so this is very similar to the prior one.
Correct. We'd want to develop the broadest language possible but yeah, maybe just not a good idea at this point in the code process, and we should just not add these exceptions.
So, Ryan, you had volunteered your services on the prior one that covered the same topic. Are you equally interested on 2.16 and 2.17?
Well, it's not that I'm interested, but if nobody else wants to do it, then I'll do it.
I appreciate that.
It's the same topic, so it's not.
Okay.
I guess it'd
It'd
be,
pretty much be the same exception for all three of these sections. Or same exception for all the sections, yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Stoyan.
You're welcome.
This is Michael Leonard. Yeah, this is another example of the clarity between R2 low rise and high rise. Thanks.
So the next one that Krista marked as as not just editorial was C411.1.1.2. So I'm into the solar section, I think.
Andy, are you on for this one?
Yeah, let me see. Oh, yeah, okay, so this is another intent-based clarification request. So in C411, under the section for mandatory renewable energy, there's a couple of pretty broad exceptions for shading or roof coverage, where it's just a straight exception. You just don't have to comply with the mandatory on-site renewable requirement. But then there's some language that if you are using one of those exceptions, you have to achieve additional C406 credits. But there's no parallel language for if you're using one of those exceptions, you have to show some additional amount of savings in a C407 energy model. And so I was looking for some clarification on if it was intended to add stringency for a prescriptive only pathway. Or suggesting potentially adding parallel language to kind of even the playing field between prescriptive and energy modeling.
So without this additional language, if you're using C407 as your compliance path, you have kind of a free out here, is what you're saying?
Correct.
So it's trying to.
If you meet one of the exceptions.
Yeah, correct. If you meet the, like, for example, 80% roof coverage, excluding roof decks and mechanical equipment, et cetera, then you just have an exception. And if you use that exception prescriptively, you have to show additional C406 credits. But if you use that exception energy modeling, there's nothing else required.
Mm-hmm. What does anybody else think about this?
Yeah, I guess, Andy, I'd like to maybe, sorry, just digesting it right now. talk with you a little bit more about it. I guess I'm thinking the BPFs, right? You can achieve those through any means. And so whether you achieved it through the mandatory PV that you were modeling in your proposed model versus C406 credits, that would just all be part of your savings demonstrated through your proposed model. So yeah, I have to think about it a little bit more.
I think the other piece of this that I would want to enter into the thought process is there is some language. Do you mind scrolling down a little bit? I think it's one of the next bullets. There's some language that you don't count any on-site renewable for your building performance factor. So it's taking away that 3% cap on renewable energy per 90.1 Appendix G modeling and saying that you don't count any for the BPF, but it does count for the new metric. I think it's building energy factor. So there's a little bit of interconnection there that I think if we do want to add this exception requirement for C407, we would want to revisit that piece of it as well.
And I guess as I'm reviewing, as I'm reviewing table C407.2, that refers to section C411 solar readiness. Well, solar readiness now, both the mandatory PV and solar readiness were put into there. So it's unclear also now in C407.2 table if you have to comply with just the solar readiness provisions of this or the PV and the solar readiness as I'm reading that mandatory table.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and I had
also
a
captured in another comment later.
Okay.
And yeah, that's another kind of intent question of, was it intended to be the solar readiness specific section or all of C411 and update the title? So was the intention the section or the title for the mandatory reference?
I guess my thought is that we have made the energy modeling path much, I guess, stronger with adding the building energy factor and the building performance factor. And so the 3% of PV that could otherwise potentially be counted in the 90.1, but not in the Washington State proposed energy code is not that, I guess, impactful. And while maybe if we were starting from scratch, this would be a great code proposal. I don't know, it seems like it would be substantial. And we're not in the code proposal phase. I don't know that it's an omission because it wasn't part of the original code proposal. That's kind of what I'm thinking about this one, but I'd love to hear what other people are thinking.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Jill. I think it's kind of more the philosophy being applied at this stage of the process where I agree it's a great idea. It's just it wasn't part of the CR 102, and is it editorial? Probably not. And also, is it essential to interpreting the code in its current form? Maybe not as well. So.
I think it's be great for the 2024 code.
Put it in my file.
I think it's, yeah, it would have been awesome to have that at tag time or other times. Okay, so that goes in the, I guess, recommend against from the MVE committee. If I think we're gonna, I don't know, at the end of the
Bucket 5.
bucket 5, yeah. And then at the end, I think we're going to vote on all these things if somebody doesn't think that they should go in the buckets we're putting them into. Okay, Eric, or brushing, that's your first set, but there's another.
So Chell, just a quick question. So obviously Eric has a lot of other awesome comments in here. Is the hope that Krista would go through and bucketize the rest of them on our behalf, or what were you kind of thinking?
So she did in the green document, the St. Patrick's Day document, she put an asterisk next to those that she felt were beyond editorial. And so we only covered the ones with asterisks.
But certainly if somebody else sees something in there that they think needs more discussion. Through this 39-page document.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly.
Do you have any other comments?
If I run into anything else that I missed the first time through, I can.
Sure. Yeah, and I think I just know a couple of the other comments had questions in them. So offline, I think we can revisit each of them. But at some point, it seems like creating a resolution to each one.
I guess I've interpreted Krista's editorial versus non-editorial as if it's not editorial, or if it is editorial, then it probably should be picked up in the code as it improves the code. And the good faith of rushing to be suggesting things that improve the code. So I guess that's how I'm interpreting it, as we don't need to go through every single editorial or clerical change, but we're welcome to revisit any of these comments.
Okay, that totally makes sense. Thanks.
So that gets us through that bundle of rushing comments. The next one is also rushing, and that's adding exception to section C403.5.
I can talk about this one. I did also give a brief public oral testimony on this item. You know, this was discussed several times during the tag process. You know, one of the changes that's happened since the code was issued was the actual AHRI testing coming back on some of the small HP small heat pump terminal unit, packaged terminal unit products, such as the EPACA units. So they aren't testing to be 15% more efficient than code in cooling. So those units don't meet exception 5, which was thought to happen be available during the tag process. So, you know, one option would be just striking the words for other than group R occupancies in item 1 and removing that language based on, you know, the fact that there was really no cost benefit analysis provided as part of that proposal, and that the primary technology that was thought to be able to allow that, isn't commercially available yet. So that would be one option that the MVE committee could consider. The other option would be, creating a 1A and 1B option, one for the other than group R and one for the group R occupancies. This would allow essentially a level playing field between the two groups, as long as the other or the group R2 occupants provide the high efficiency ERV, HRV that the commercial occupancies has to do. So they wouldn't be allowed to use the exception in exception 3 of sections C403.3.5.1. So they would provide the 68% effective ERV instead of the 60% that they're allowed for sensible recovery. So I think this, we don't see tons of cooling in, multifamily. They aren't internal heat driven spaces. This allows, to not be adding significant costs, construction costs for group R occupancy, R2 occupancies. So that is my proposed clarification to address the new information that's now available.
Any comments, questions?
I guess, Eric, a question for 1B, is that, in your opinion, highly burdensome? I mean, I think you raise an awesome point, which is that it's tackling the heating load, which is more prevalent in R2. So I think that's a really sensible alternative, just in terms of how burdensome that option is. Just curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, they would still have option 5 available for high efficiency cooling units, and this would allow them the flexibility, since they already have to have energy recovery ventilation, to select that ERV to be a higher efficiency, and they would have to provide it in parallel. There are certain products out there in the residential market that do the ERV in series. So the R2 occupancies are still doing something. It's not a freebie in how you're installing the system, which is kind of the way the code proposal was written, that you already have to have ERV. We should restrict exception 1 to not allow that. So yeah, I think that's a much more cost-effective solution for a lot of projects. We're trying to get people to do the heat pump heating. This, of course, incentivizes heat pump heating because you have the cooling, and is going to help move people away from electric resistance heat also. So, I think this focuses the code. This allows an exception for the heat pumps that we're trying to get installed, also without having to go with a super high efficiency cooling heat pump system.
So it's an exception, so it allows more flexibility. And then, is it substantial? It's not a substantial decrease in the efficiency of the code or anything like that. Doesn't sound like.
Yeah, I think in this, it's just adding another option on the table amongst all the ones that were there before.
And from a code perspective, are there exceptions 1A and 1B elsewhere, or are they just usually exceptions 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, it could be renumbered, I guess, but
unless we're trying to.
They're referenced other places probably, so I didn't do that right off.
Yep. Okay, well, this seems, I guess, reasonable based on what I've heard. And Caroline, you seem to think it's reasonable as well.
Yeah, I think the addition of 1B is
Okay,
a good option.
well, let's put this into the bucket too of something we talked about today and think is a good idea. And maybe goes beyond editorial, but is not substantial perhaps. Okay, next we have Michael Hedrick with some proposals, and I have to bring those up. So the next one is Michael Hedrick, and it's C403.1.4. Exception 4. So yeah. So it's exception 4 down here at the bottom, describing defrost on heat pumps.
Well, I guess, Krista, question first. Was your sense that all of these ones were substantial? Or
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
yeah, I think we can scroll through these. I think they're pretty minor. Just some, I think in item 4, that clarification there. I think further down in 5.2 and 5.3.2, adding a clarification, just that those don't apply when that unit is in defrost. I think so this blue language here, I think, was an attempt to clarify how section 5.4 was written. It is one very long sentence in its current form, and the thought was separating that out into a 5.41 and 5.42 might improve clarity, but certainly just an option, not a requirement. I think something staff could look at and decide it is too much of an overhaul or that it is warranted.
Does that sound good, Krista? Is that reasonable?
I'm sorry, I missed that. I have a little bit of interference going on.
No worries. Yeah, I think the intent with this comment 5.4 was just about trying to clarify that sentence. It's a very long sentence with commas and ands and ors. And so the alternate language is definitely not intended to change the intent, just to improve the clarity of what that is trying to say, but completely optional and probably warrants a read by others to see if it achieves that improved clarity or not. Yeah, I think if you scroll down, item 15, I think was just to clarify that it was about a space with an indoor design condition of 45 or lower, so it didn't have to be exactly 45. Item 17, I think, was just creating parallelism with the titles for all the other sections. That one didn't have one. Yeah, I think if you scroll down a touch more, the only one shall in here that maybe deserves tag attention and or I think Robbie proposed this hot water coil selection measure. And there was some thought about some potential changes there, but I think would be good to make sure that he has his eyes on and agrees or would like to debate those further. So I think this particular topic in front of us right here is one that could go onto the tag deliberation list. It might be considered a bit more substantive.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool.
And that's both the modification to exception 2 as well as the addition of exception 5.
Exactly.
Okay. That sounds good.
And I think this next comment is should be removed from consideration because the standard number is referenced in the references section of the code. So this comment, I think, has been retracted. And I think that is it. I think if you scroll through the rest of these, they are just comments, but there's not actionable code language. So I don't think that we can successfully address them.
Great. Good to have all those comments. Do we have Mike Kennedy in the house? Doesn't look like we do. Mike Kennedy has spent a lot of time on this and put together a long list of comments. Krista, there's an action on the list that Mike Kennedy sent in. Is that you didn't add that in there? That was him, right?
Didn't add which?
Under, if you click on the Mike Kennedy thing, there's a column for action and a column for priority. And
No,
that's
Mike's.
That's Mike's. Okay, so he's thinking the tag is going to handle lots of stuff. Krista, do you have any notion of how best to go through Mike's comments? Realize I'm putting you on the spot, but I don't have a great notion of how best to go through his comments.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree with all of his comments. I certainly don't agree that the first one is a editorial change. Changing to something that, yeah.
Yeah,
that isn't out yet. But I mean, that's not something we can do. That
Yeah,
would
that's-
have to go into the next code.
it's a code proposal. Okay.
The council can adopt something they haven't seen.
No. I guess the second one is just a note. I don't know that there's action necessary on that one.
We have gotten a number of pieces of testimony on this. And I think there are a couple more on the list that AHRI and others have said that we should not be adopting these efficiencies because the DOE still hasn't ruled on them and they may be pulled. So, you know, it's up to the council whether they want to be conservative or run up against the risk of preemption.
Larry. You're on mute, Larry.
I see a little wordsmith in here. 84% gas, hot. I think it should be water, not where.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Anything else, Larry?
I'm in the, you're making percentages that there might not be equipment available to do this. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think we should let the council weigh in on this one and not have the MVE weigh in on it.
I'm looking at especially these oil figures. I mean, you're getting to the point where you're almost condensing oil and then that turns into tar. It's pretty bad mess. And the flue gases.
Thanks, Larry. Chris, I'm inclined to send this to the council with no MVE opinion on it, because the risk decisions should probably be weighed in by the council. Anybody have any additional thoughts on that?
I think that makes sense, Joe. Should we be tracking our comments on each one of these as we're doing them, or Chell, do you want offline to ask staff to go do a pre-filter on these, or what are your thoughts? Or we can just walk through them.
I guess we've got a lot to do after this as well. Mike Kennedy has a lot of comments, but then there's a lot of other comments as well. Yeah, I guess I'm assuming now we're going to have a TUG meeting and we'll have at least one more MVE committee meeting. So I guess I'm wondering, Krista, would it be possible for you to go through this? I see you typing, so I'm going to pause for a second. Go through this and figure out which ones are probably past due, their code proposals, and we can't take those at this point. Which bucket it goes into, approximately send it to me, and I could then kind of agree with that or make some modifications and then send those ones to the tag or to the council or back to the MVE. Is that allowed? Or does the MVE specifically have to refer certain things to the tag?
It's pretty much up to you. So if your determination is to send it to staff for further review and then consider it at a later date, that we can do that and make a determination of whether we should convene this or send it to the tag and convene the tag, or just report out to the council.
Okay, I think with Mike Kennedy's comments, at least this batch of them, I'd like to refer it to staff and then have you send me what you think and I'll review that, and then the tag will consider ones that we think the tag should consider. The MVE will consider or some of them might not go to the tag. And some of them we might just not be able to address because they're code proposals and don't need to be part of the process going forward. Does that make sense? Is that a good path?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll stop reviewing this right now and instead, I guess, go to the next Mike Kennedy proposal or group of proposals and see if they follow the same pathway. So this one is shorter. It's hard for me to tell what is his strikeouts and added language blue. Where is that? Okay,
Yeah,
so
this is another one where I think in the summary, in Krista's summary, she's pointing out or that these are changes as part of the 2024 IECC.
oh yeah. Okay, well, why don't we do the same thing? Krista, you can help determine where this should go and I'll weigh in and we'll send it to the right people. And this one might be just not possible based on the fact that it might be a code change proposal instead of a comment on the CR 102. The next one is a C 404.2.
This one as well kind of refers to ongoing conversations as part of the IECC.
Okay. We'll put that in the same bucket. C406 edits. So next one. So this one, the blue language that's kind of hard to see is striking out 24 and putting in 50% efficiency credits required for new construction for this list of spaces. I guess I'm concerned that this is pretty significant.
Yeah, I agree, Michelle. I think we would want the proponent of this proposal to weigh on that change.
Mike, are you still here?
Okay. I don't know what to do with this one. Maybe we we have to look at the entire R4 C406 section to see if it's even possible for this to be implemented. I'm sure Mike has looked at that, but I don't know. This seems, at least the requirement for striking 24 and putting 50 in, that seems pretty substantive and maybe not appropriate to the time, the part of the code cycle that we're in. So what's on the screen right now is the yellow the new language?
There's some yellow and some blue.
Okay, and they're both,
One's from Reed Hart and the blue, I think, is from Mike Kennedy.
well, the blue up at the top, is that actually new language, or is that just highlighting an area and making a comment on it, I think?
That's just the comment right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chell, my sense is, right, some of these comments are commenting on potential areas that could be improved, but leaving how to do that in question, which makes it difficult to understand if the onus is on us to develop code language to respond to the issue if there's not a specific proposal in front of us. Like some of these truly are just comments and not, I guess, in this exact moment, actionable words that we could discuss. So
Yeah, that first comment is probably falls in that category. I agree. The first yellow section certainly is clarity, adds clarity to the code. But I don't know if it's I think it adds some good clarity, actually. But it's also not just editorial. It would have real world implications.
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I was seeing this as one of those gray areas.
I think too, Chell, this would be more productive if we could have Reed or Mike here, and maybe that would be possible at the April 1st meeting.
Yeah, I don't want to throw too many things in that hopper, but I didn't have any technical issues with this. The question is just, is it substantial, and is it, I guess, a good idea? And it seems like a good idea. Technically, it seems reasonable. It's just about strategy. Is this the intent of the other code language? And it's just clarifying the intent. So you're suggesting, Caroline, maybe the tag, take it up with Reed and Mike in attendance?
I think that might make sense. I just recall in the tag process, there was a lot of discussion about area weighting, and that was not a hotly contested issue, but there was strong opinions where those changes might benefit from those stakeholders being able to weigh in.
Yep. Okay, well, why don't we kick the first one to the tag. The first yellow one. Occupancy group is less than 10% of the floor area, kick that to the tag. And then if we can ask Reed to be there and Mike, that would be good. And then the second one, I think the yellow one as well. Yeah, I don't think we have the ability here to concentrate on that to the level we need to. And then a rewrite of the language in C406. So this is something where we have in the past allowed this table to be updated based on modifications elsewhere in the code. And so this seems to me to be reasonable and within the spirit of what the tag approved, which was that where other things changed in the code, the table could be updated to reflect that. Andy.
Yeah, along those lines, I believe that the electricity carbon factor was modified as an approved proposal. So that's going to require updates to basically all of the building performance factors and all of the credit totals here, right? Because these are all based on carbon emissions.
Yep.
So I think this entire table point allocation has to be updated regardless, right?
We did receive PNNL's update to the building performance factors, but it did not include any updates to this table.
Okay.
I guess, Chell, just to echo a bit of what you were saying, though, I think the intent of these tables and the tables Andy's referring to in C407, I think the end goal is that those tables reflect decisions that are made elsewhere in the code that might still be pending. And so anyway, just to state that I think if tweaks are happening to the numbers here that reflect decisions that have been made, I think that that is more of a correlation updating exercise and not a substantial change, given that that has been the expected kind of outcome throughout.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So why don't we approve the minor yellow modification in line 3 and say that should go to the council as part of our recommended package. As far as the 95 with exception C, nothing, they're not recommending a change there, right? They're just talking about the credit. So,
Well, they did change the footnote.
oh, they did, okay. Oh yeah, credit E or exception E.
I think that makes sense. I think they're just pointing out that when it's a prescriptive requirement, you can't obtain these credits. Feels like just a clarification.
Yep, that makes sense to me as well. And then the change of the word infiltration to leakage. I don't know how we've defined infiltration versus leakage elsewhere, but this doesn't really, it's a title, it's not a, I don't find that it's substantially alters anything or even really alters anything. It's just the name of a measure, not the language that tells you what to do to meet the measure. I don't know. Caroline, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it should. I imagine it changed for good reason to align with how it's referenced elsewhere. But maybe that's something that Krista can check on.
Yeah, I'm assuming the testing is specific to air leakage.
Seems reasonable.
So yeah, it makes sense to change the title to match.
Yep. Then there's a lot more changing, I guess. A lot of these are probably editorial, clerical. So I guess scanning through these. Trying to find if we can just have this go to staff to tell us what's substantive and which bucket they go into. There's some pretty detailed things in here that are beyond my technical understanding. So
Yeah.
So Krista, can you take a look at the rest of this and bucket these and then?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Okay, the next Mike Kennedy one, C407, is it?
So this first one looks like the same comment that Andy was raising, just questions about which portions of C411 were mandatory, all of it, portions of it.
That's a pretty fundamental question.
Yeah.
I think the C412 reference, that was the new section, and I imagine that was an oversight that it was not included in the mandatory table, but it also wasn't included previously, so, well, because it didn't exist, but.
And personally on C411, I would lean towards just changing the title from solar readiness to renewables, as that section title did change, and then just leave off the 0.3 and everything, because we've got the footnote that says and all subsections.
That would make sense. So we just keep C411, retitle it renewables. That sounds good. So we are 2/3, we're 2 hours in. Should we take a couple-minute break?
Yeah, really quick. I think it's renewable energy is the name of that, of C411. I think.
Renewable energy, yeah, makes sense.
Right.
Why don't we take a break for like 3 minutes or so? We're gonna be done in an hour. But I feel like going past 2 hours is just challenging without at least some sort of a break. Let's take a break for 3 minutes. 3:03. See you then.
There you go.
All right, welcome back.
So I'm sorry, what was the decision on the site energy target comment?
I think again, this might be the same comment Andy had, that I think the C411.2 is just referring to the wrong section.
Okay, yeah.
And then the added sentence seems fine. I think it's just adding a little bit of clarity. I don't think it's changing the intent or the requirement in any way.
No, thanks. Andy.
Yeah, if we could just pop back up to the C4072 mandatory sections table. I just wanted to briefly point out that for the C411 renewable energy section reference, for 2018 Seattle Energy Code, we added a clarification there that made it explicit that compliance with any of these sections includes compliance via exception. I don't know if we want to consider adding a similar clarification to the C407.2 table for 2021 Washington State. And the reason that it got added to 2018 Seattle was for the section C412 for Seattle Energy Code, but the mandatory renewable energy section had a couple different exception pathways. And some folks had concerns about making sure it was very explicit that you don't just have to comply with the renewable requirements. If you met one of the exceptions, that counted as your compliance for C407. I can clip in the text that was included in 2018 SEC for reference in the chat. Sorry, it won't let me paste a picture. Let me type it in.
And while Andy's doing that, Krista, do we actually have to take any action on anything as a council or as a committee? Or can we just refer things to entities without a motion?
I think you can just refer it without making the motion.
Okay. At some point, we'll probably lose a quorum. And so I was wondering if that would impact anything we do. And if we don't need to vote on anything, then I don't think that impacts, then not having a quorum might not impact us. I think that's very reasonable. What we're talking about now.
And Andy, was your intent?
Footnote B on the entire
Yeah.
all of table 407. And up here.
Okay. And then, did we suggest that C411 and C411.3 are kind of consolidated, renamed? I guess that's not part of this proposal, but that's maybe a good way to consolidate comments. And maybe it's renewable energy for C411. Cool. All right. What else? So we're down to, are we down to Ian or still have section, we still have Kennedy 411. So
Yeah.
So this describes issues. Okay, and if you scroll down a couple pages, you'll see some specific code language modifications. I think this really needs to go to the tag. I don't know, is that your thought, Caroline, Krista?
I was thinking it needs to be a code change proposal.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I think that's. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't quite know the path forward, but this doesn't seem like one that we can resolve here and now.
And this would definitely be a substantive change to what was filed, and
I mean, it seems like the tag could at least agree on where a change made, what the preferred course of action would be, and council could decide, is that knowing it would trigger a substantial change, do they want to make that change or not?
Yeah, I guess this is generally one complete idea, this code, this piece of PDF. And I guess, are there editorial things in here that are helpful, or is it all kind of just one big thought that is itself a code change proposal? Krista, why don't you take a crack at that, answering that question, and then I will also do the same thing. See if there's anything in here that's not code change proposal, but in fact just helpful in language crafting and in that way.
okay.
Andy.
Yeah, I apologize. I had one other clarification back to the C407.2 mandatory provisions section table for the renewable energy. 2018 Seattle Energy Code also added a clarification in the notes comments that all on-site renewable energy production is included in the proposed building performance, but not the baseline, to make it really explicit that C411 being mandatory does not mean that your baseline energy model has a renewable energy system. So I'd recommend we add that language or something similar to it, referencing, because now we've got the building performance factor and the building energy factor. We probably need to reference the language for those, but some sort of clarification there to make that more explicit.
That does make sense.
And I just put that sample language from SEC in the chat.
Yeah, I guess I assumed that was true, but it wasn't actually in the code language, so. Yep. Okay. Okay, Ian Robinson is the next one. And I think this is one for the, well, I know a lot of people did have comments on the carbon emissions table. But I think all the comments were about the electricity number, not necessarily gas number, but this one's about the gas number. Larry. And you're on mute, Larry.
I wrote a comment about the propane number being so much lower than the natural gas number. And when we're doing our combustion tests, the CO2 that comes out of propane is at least 2.5% more than what comes out of natural gas. But you're showing on the table that more CO2 is produced by natural gas than propane. That's not right.
Okay, and you submitted that as a comment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know where you're getting the numbers. I mean, because when we're shooting these combustion tests, they don't tell you that. And I even put documentation in from one of the manufacturers. So I think we need to look at that table totally over again. Okay. Anyway.
No, that's good information, Larry. Thanks.
Yeah,
Ian.
Mike Lubliner, I'm not sure, that seems odd too, Larry. I don't know if where they're putting the boundary analysis. In other words, is it looking at the externalities of the transmission of the gas from the natural gas versus propane, which is a byproduct, as I understand, of the refinement of gasoline. So that might be the explanation, but I do think it's good to get the answer because people on the hotline are going to ask those questions. Thanks.
Yep, I agree.
One more question is, I like Mike's idea there, but you got to remember all the propane's trucked in pretty much with a truck, where all the natural gas is through a pipeline, and you're a lot less carbon footprint with a pipeline than you are running a diesel truck running around delivering all this stuff.
Absolutely, Larry. And I think that's my question about not knowing where their boundary assumptions were in the analysis. If it was just the combustion efficiency and the resultant CO2, or some broader analysis, and whether or not that took into account the transportation of the propane. That's why it would be useful to comment and get clarification on that. We'd love that answer too. Those are the kind of questions we get from folks. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike and Larry. Those are good. Those are good comments. And I know there are sources that were put forth, but I can't remember them off the top of my head as to the sources used for the tables. With the exception of electricity that was proposed by Commerce this year based on other studies. Ian.
Yeah, hey, this is Ian. This is my proposal. Yeah, my thinking here was that if you do the math on 11.7 pounds per therm, that really does just represent the products of complete combustion of methane, essentially, and it has no accounting for any upstream effects. Most significantly, the leakage of natural gas in the production process. Estimates are anywhere from 1% to 3%, but natural gas has a global warming potential of like 80, so that would could potentially double the emissions factor.
Thanks, Ian. Kevin.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you. I was just going to mention that, yeah, 19 is consistent with ASHRAE standard 105, using the global warming potential of 20 rate. If we're going to use that standard, though, I think we should also adjust the electricity factor accordingly, and just to be consistent.
And Kevin, you mean if we're drawing the boundary at site usage, we should do that for all fuels, whereas if we're drawing the boundary at wellhead leakage or pipeline leakage, we should draw the boundary for all fuels kind of similarly broadly.
Very well put, Jill. Yeah, I mean, I think the electricity emissions factor is based on not full fuel cycle, but just at the combustion source, which would be a generation plant, I think. But ASHRAE standard 105 does have a very thorough analysis of this. There's also ASHRAE standard 189.1 in the same effect, but anyway, but I'm guessing all of this would be considered a substantial change.
I think it would, and I think this is the kind of issue that the council should consider, and we received lots of comments on the carbon table, and this would affect that. So I guess my inclination would be to send this to the council without any modification by the MVE committee, or any comment, I guess, by the MVE committee.
Yeah, I think we're veering into bucket 3 and probably 4 on this one. So thank you.
Larry, did you have another comment?
Yeah, the CO2 emissions is based off the heating value of the fuel, okay? And the heating value of natural gas is about 900 or 1,000 BTUs per cubic foot. The heating value of a gallon of propane is 2,500 BTUs per foot per gallon. And then you go to oil, which is about 140,000, depending on what type of oil. But as you go up in the heating values of these fuels, so does the CO2 content go in the fuel too. The oil has the most, propane has the second, and natural gas has the least of the fuels that we burn primarily. Okay, and that's what I don't know where they're getting these numbers, but that's reality when you're out there shooting combustion tests.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thanks, Larry. That's great information. And this will be brought up to the council, I'm sure. Laurel has some comments. I don't know if you are here, Laurel, but we can bring up, there's a definitions one about parking garages being low energy spaces, TSPR. Clarification, these are not specific code language. So someone would have to develop code language to move these forward.
Yeah, I agree, Charlie. I think appreciate the comments for sure, but I'm not sure how many of these are incredibly actionable at this moment.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know that in this late process. I think the only ones are definitions. One, I guess, could be looked at, but other than that, I think they are generally, yeah, unfortunately, kind of late in the game to not have code language to address these.
Well, the definition one, she's just saying that they support the changes.
Oh, support. Okay. Well, then there's nothing there to, okay. Okay. All right. We'll move on. Eric from Bradford White. Eric, are you around? And there are support and opposition, caution. There are suggestions for 4 additional exceptions on page, I guess there's no, page 4. Suggestion of 4 additional exceptions to it doesn't say exactly, but I'm assuming it's the space heating proposal. Yeah, it is space heating. There's 4 exceptions proposed here. I don't know that they're code language. I think the code official, or the first bullet, the code official already has the ability to waive things if they're technically infeasible.
Yeah, I think bullets 1 and 3 kind of speak to that, Joe. And then I think bullets 2 and 4 are somewhat addressed by the other topic on the I2 issue we talked about earlier.
Yep. Yeah, definitely bullet 2 and bullet 4. I don't think emergency generators are covered by electric resistance or fossil fuel parts of the code. So yeah. Okay. No, see a whole lot of other proposed code language in here. Oh no, there is some. Get to the end. Actually, I don't know. I can't tell if that's code language or not. Or I mean, proposed code language. I guess it's not really. Yeah, that's not really code language. Yeah, what you have on the screen right there, the upper bullet does seem like it's a suggestion for code language. preferring option 1 and then I don't know. I'm not technically savvy enough to know what their suggested modification would do. Do you, Caroline?
Yeah, I think it's something I'd have to take a closer look at. I only made it through first chunk of comments. So I haven't looked at this one carefully. I think it might pertain to some of Mike's comments about boiler efficiency that we were looking at earlier. So I do not have an opinion at this exact moment, but maybe something to either put on the tag list or we can review with Krista to decide which bucket it should go in.
Let's do that. Let's do that last one. And just this bullet, I think right here is the piece of suggested code language that probably could easily be code language. Okay, and that's the conclusion of the letter. So it expresses a lot of opinions, but the main piece of suggested code language we talked about, and I think we'll figure out what to do with that one piece. Bob Gunn. Yeah, this looks like code language, and it looks like we would need to get our lighting expert in the energy code tag to weigh in on whether that's a reasonable modification that doesn't change a whole lot or improves it rather. Is that what you think, Caroline?
Yeah, I agree. I think these next three related to lighting probably should be referred to the tag to rely on that expertise there.
Okay.
I think there's two comments here about the grow lighting. And then another lighting comment.
Talking about the Nicholas one?
Yeah, the Nicholas one, and then also the next one, the Amanda one.
No, I think we'll refer that one and Amanda one to the tag. Gets us to Mike Rosenberg. Mike, are you here? Okay. TSPR.
What did I do with the TSPR one?
And it's a lot of fairly technical changes to a table.
Yeah, my sense of these changes, Chell, is that they are kind of, as he states in his letter, clarifications and fixing of technical errors that in something this complex are obviously expected.
Yeah, unless you have confidence in this, I guess I send this to the tag as well. I mean, we're adding applicable systems. I guess this is just so far out of my expertise. I don't feel comfortable, but if you and any others in the room that have an understanding of this think it's kind of a reasonable common sense clarification, then I'm happy to go with that.
Yeah, I think it's probably reasonable, but I also don't think at all getting more input at this stage and more eyes and opinions, as long as that meeting doesn't get too overwhelmed. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. Kevin.
I was just going to voice my agreement with Carolyn.
That it looks reasonable.
Oh, that it looks reasonable, but there may be things that need to be, discovered and discussed. So I think that should go to the tag.
Okay.
I mean, I know I'm ladling that on myself, but it's still.
Yeah. Yep. You'll get to look at this later. Okay. So that's that one. Mike has another one. And these are the BPFs to be used. Kevin.
Oh, yeah. Just a process question, Shell. You've mentioned a number of items to be sent to the tag. Will there be a package delivered to tag members in advance of that meeting to review?
Yes, we will need to do that. I think not only are we going to do that, but hopefully we can assign a few people on the tag to look at a few of the things so that we have at least some people, like the lighting people, look at the lighting ones and some other people look at other ones, so that we come prepared to make decisions, not spend an hour investigating a single suggestion. So
that sounds brilliant. Thanks.
That's of course relying entirely on staff who are over busy as it is.
Fair enough.
To package these things together. So
it's true. Krista is superhuman. So
just can you let me clarify the staff thing?
Yeah, please.
There is not much staff left. Two of the current technical experts are code specialists are leaving at the end of the month. So it's Krista and the managing director and the administrative assistant. That's it. So I really want to help on many things. I like working on codes, but if Krista gets too much and I don't feel knowledgeable, then we may get stuck in the process.
Yeah, we need to value Krista not only as someone who does lots of awesome things, but also has a life and doesn't need to work crazy hours and get burned out. So
this is what I was trying to say. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess to that end, what are our options? I mean, there's lots of people interested in the code and somehow not many people working on it.
We do the best we can, and she does, especially her, the best she can. But I don't want her to work overnight.
Yeah.
So if we can, reduce the workload a little bit, and again, we will do the best we can to help. But don't get upset if we cannot perform sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you guys are doing an amazing job, and staffing shortages, and Chris is absolutely amazing. I guess I'm asking how we can lighten the load. If one of the outcomes of this is that we have another tag meeting, that certainly adds to the load. If we have another MVE, that adds to the load, and if we're asking staff to do certain things, that adds to the load. And what can anybody other than staff do to help lighten the load? I guess that's an open question that I'd love, and we can talk about this outside of the MVE, but
we understand that you folks are kind of donating your time, and we want to coordinate with you, and again, just share the load, but nobody needs to be overloaded in the process.
Totally agree with that. Yeah, let's have a conversation offline about how any of us can help lighten the load, because it's awesome work that you do, and you don't want to burn anybody out. Okay.
So Chell, I think this one in front of us is pretty straightforward. I think this is just Mike Rosenberg's latest updates to the BPFs and the energy performance targets based on what is in the CR 102 and assumptions about which options would get chosen. But in his letter, he volunteers to update these values again based on the kind of final outcome. So I think that's consistent with the expected approach for C407.
Yeah, that was the tag intent as well. So,
And that's pretty much what we did last round as well.
so we'll recommend this go to the council. And that means we on the last one then? This is RuPaul. Some indoor air quality. So the first comment one, suggests a bit of clarification.
I think it suggests optional clarification. That is not essential. And then I think again, comment 2 references ASHRAE 90.1 2019, and I think would increase stringency and seems like an optional consideration as well.
Being heat recovery be increased to 90% from 75%. So I guess increasing stringency is not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know, is it a substantial change? I don't know the difference between 90% and 75% recovery system. Is it minimal?
I mean, I guess it just kind of comes back to more, is this a great idea for next time? That's more of a code proposal and not as much of a public comment unless the intent of the original proposal was to align with 90.1 2019, and that was something that was kind of incorrectly transferred into this idea, but I don't know the answer to that right here.
Or it could have been the discussion at the tag level when we were talking about the 2019 language to reduce it as a halfway point between existing code and 90.1. I don't recall.
So it does seem like it would be, I would guess it would be fairly substantial to go from 75 to 90.
Yeah, it seems this one could get just kicked back to the proponent as well to have them weigh in on the public comment. But again, I think in light of all the public comments, this one maybe is not essential to move forward.
No. I'll go with that, and maybe it goes into the 5th bucket. Well, that gets us through the green sheet. I guess we've bucketed a bunch of things out. We've assigned a bunch of things to staff to figure out which bucket they go into. To that end, Krista, could I lighten your load a bit by doing some of that?
Shall I'd be happy to work with you to go through. I mean, I think the one we didn't get to today was Mike Kennedy's very substantial list of comments. So maybe we could take on that one and bucketize it.
Yeah.
Outcome of that could be considered at the next MVE, and or we could pre-filter things towards the tag if there was anything out of there that needed to go, which seemed like Mike was suggesting that would be likely.
That sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other subjects, Krista, Caroline, others that we should cover today that relate to the commercial energy code? Comments received.
I guess, Chell, maybe you could just give your best understanding of, I'm sure there's a lot of folks here today curious to know which of these topics today will be discussed at the council meeting tomorrow, or kind of the we talked about that we thought needed full council consideration. Will those items kind of be the subject for tomorrow?
It's a good question, so that I mean, the council will have basically an open deliberation tomorrow on any comments received. And I think, yeah, I'll state that if we're talking about a subject that the MVE committee discussed today at the council tomorrow, I'll bring that up, that MVE discussed it and either kicked it to the tag or didn't have an opinion on it or has an opinion on it. To the extent I can remember that from today. I took some notes, but not perfect notes.
I will update the green sheet and have it posted for the meeting tomorrow as well.
Great.
As much as I can. Some of those, there were multiple actions on the one document, so.
Great. Johnny, I did see your hand up.
Yeah, I think I walked in a little late and I apologize for that, but I think you mentioned that the proposal for the hospital exemptions was pushed out to the tag. I just looked on the website and it doesn't seem like that meeting's been scheduled. Do you know what time, what date that meeting might be? And I guess I should show up as the person who submitted that letter.
Yeah, so we just created that tag meeting today, and my guest, Krista, please weigh in on this, and Stoyan. April 1st. It's 2 weeks away. It seems, I think 1 week would be too soon to convene a group of people. 2 weeks seems reasonable, and the sooner we get it done, the sooner the council will have the tags recommendations, and the sooner the MVE committee would have the tags recommendations.
Okay. And,
does that fit on the calendar, Stoyan and Krista?
It doesn't look like, yeah, Krista will open the calendar. I don't recall anything on April 1st.
It does not look like we have other council meetings or tag meetings scheduled. In that time.
I was trying to stay away of April 1st.
You're trying to, what?
I was trying to avoid April 1st.
Just because it seems someone's gonna pull a prank on us?
Yeah.
Yep. And just shortly, is there any immediate questions that I could answer from that proposal, or is it pretty just clear to send it directly to the tag?
I think it was being sent to the tag because there were two similar but not entirely
Okay.
similar proposals, one by the Hospital Association, one by you, that are both code language and both probably adoptable, and the tag should weigh in on the
Great.
technical language and all that.
Thank you so much.
Gary.
Yeah, I know we've usually had tag meetings on Fridays, but would it have to be on a Friday?
Doesn't have to be on a Friday, no.
Okay.
It can be any time that we could send out a poll or something
Yeah.
like that to get people to respond, but I think we need to schedule it very soon. So
yep, I
Right.
agree.
The question was usually tag members had Fridays free, and that was when we could muster a quorum.
Yep, understood.
yeah. Is there some reason, Gary, that you're suggesting maybe we don't do a Friday?
I'm going to be out of town on April 1st, but I'm not terribly concerned. I'd like to attend, but Kevin is my backup, so that should not be a governing factor. You should go for whatever date works best for the majority of the tag.
Okay, and the tag's recommendations will go to the MVE and the council, so there'll be many other opportunities for you to comment on it.
Thanks.
But we'll miss you. But we'll get to see Kevin. Okay. Anything else on the topic of the commercial energy code proposals and the language and process? So Chris, I'm assuming that probably the right thing to do would be to set up this meeting probably around the 1st, if not on the 1st, and then an MVE committee meeting possibly the following week.
Well, we have an MVE committee set up for the 21st. We can do an interim one if you wish.
I guess, is it too late to do the MVE the day before the council meeting? I guess are some people going to cry foul if we, I guess we're providing recommendations to the council to consider, so.
As staff, I would say it would be helpful to have a little bit more time in between those two meetings, but it depends on your availability and as a committee and how you want to schedule it.
I think the 14th or the 7th, if we're going to do a Thursday, would be preferable and would avoid the day before the council meeting to reduce stress and increase transparency. So I think Thursday afternoon.
Bad idea. Either the 7th or the 14th. I think that makes more sense. And then also the council would have more time to review any recommendations out of that meeting. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. We can try to schedule something up.
Okay. All right, well, anything else for the good of the order? Is there any other business? Oh, so I see something on the screen. Did Krista, is that your way of saying that we should do something about something?
No, this is just showing you Eric's language on that exception 3, although I'm not sure you can see it on the shared language since it's in tiny type.
It looks great. I think that it's just an editorial thing, so.
Okay. Well, let's put that in the move forward bucket to the council. Okay. Any other business? All right, everybody, have a good St. Patrick's Day, and we are adjourned.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everybody.